week 16 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few kickers I have as sleepers this week. The first kicker, Joshua Carty, the Los Angeles Rams. It's been a decent season for Joshua Carty, and he's on a high-powered offense. And this week, he's a good streaming option with a great matchup at the Jets, where they're bend but don't break defense for the most part. That gives up the fourth most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So Carty out there in 96% of fantasy leagues. In the last few weeks, week 13 in New Orleans, 3 points. Week 14 versus Buffalo, 6. And week 15, a big game at the 49ers with 13 fantasy points in that one. So he's been an accurate kicker for the most part this season. Like I said, this week is a good matchup. The only down thing could obviously be the weather in New York this time of year. Either wet, snowy weather or just heavy winds in the mid-December here. So Joshua Carty this week I think could be a kicker that could go out there and put up points, and a good sleeper option this week. The next kicker, Brandon McManus of the Green Bay Packers, out there in 77% of fantasy leagues, and he's been a good signing for this Packer team. With 3 out of the last 4 games, he's had double-digit fantasy points. Week 12 versus the Niners, 10. Week 13 versus Miami, 13. Week 14 at the Lions, 7. And Week 15 at Seattle, 12 fantasy points. So this week, a good matchup versus New Orleans Saints, Monday Night Football. They give up the 18th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. But we know the Saints defense is depleted, and Green Bay, they've been in the red zone all season long getting opportunities for their kickers. And I believe once again we'll see 3 or 4 opportunities, a few extra points from Brandon McManus. And he's definitely a kicker that's been great over the last few weeks. And a sleeper option this week, and the third and final kicker I have is a sleeper, is Chad Ryland of the Arizona Cardinals. So Ryland, he's been a good kicker since he's gotten the opportunity since Matt Breida went out with injury. And this week, a slam dunk matchup with the Carolina Panthers that give up the second most fantasy points to kickers on the season. So the last 2 out of 4 weeks he's had double-digit fantasy games is Chad Ryland. And this Arizona Cardinal team, they've had trouble at times punching it into the end zone. Week 12 at Seattle, 5. Week 13 in Minnesota, 16. Week 14 versus the Seahawks, 3. And Week 15, a good game versus the Patriots, 14 fantasy points. So this week, it wouldn't be surprising to me if Ryland goes out there and gets double-digit fantasy points once again. Like I said, with Arizona struggling at times to get it into the end zone, and with the Panthers giving up a lot of field goals this season, second most to opposing kickers, Ryland's a good sleeper option, and he's available in 94% of fantasy leagues. So that's a few kickers I have as sleepers for Week 16 of the fantasy football season.